Hello, welcome to 52 Weeks. This is week number 3. This week we're going to be going through the Harrisburg Comprehensive Plan, and I'm going to look at it from going backwards in some of the chapters, or at least starting at the end, which is in chapter 9, which is the integration chapter, is important because it looks at how do these things all play together. This is extremely important because in the next 10, 20 years, there are going to be a lot of things happening in Harrisburg, and what happens is it gets in a cycle of continual development and growth. And it energizes people to do things. This is actually very good. The harmful side of that is if it's done in a way that there is no support system to help guide it, that could be detrimental. So one of the things I have a high concern of, and we've talked about this before, is who is overseeing the process. We know that the Planning Commission, which is a great commission to try and figure out what's happening in our city, is a volunteer board that is unpaid. And so there's not much teeth that can grab on and be very mindful or watchdoggy to what's happening in the city. And they've tried, and I think in the past they've just fallen into a typical traditional mode. Like what we do is just look at developers coming in wanting to do things in Harrisburg and judging on past history whether this is good or bad and what the impacts of the city it is, which is what the Planning Commission should be doing. However, we also have folks who don't have a full background in planning and urban design, and they also don't have some of the legal background to go against lawyers that are very savvy, especially developers who know this game. So this is what's critical in understanding the things within the Harrisburg Comprehensive Plan. So without a plan, any of these things that pop up can do whatever, and there's no grounds for rational dialogue or discourse. This is what's happened over the past 40-some years in Harrisburg. So this final chapter looks at the holistic approach needed for the capital investments in interconnected ways. And we looked at the comp plan is in capital investment, but it also affects some of the social structure that's in there, and also natural places, so the physical and social. This goes back to why the triple bottom line is so important. We're looking at people, place, and economic development. It's not just one-sided of economic development. So how is this looked at in integration? Well, this is in the areas of housing, targeted commercial development areas, open space system restoration, number 3, and number 4 is infrastructure systems. So if we understand these 4 things and try to have them in a way, if we all constantly look at how they all interconnect, we can have a better understanding of why we should be doing some things in Harrisburg and why we should maybe have some caution or a deeper dialogue. So the whole point of integration is a holistic moves of understanding these 4 items. One thing that's interesting is understanding the squaring of the city and understanding larger mechanisms of how our city works. This is in the structure that's there, the infrastructure, as well as how we physically live and move in the city and how it grows. The next is looking at the bundling of projects, thinking about how neighborhoods are connected through the bridges, corridor streets, greenways. All of this we can think about is why we go back to the Manning Plan of the City Beautiful movement, and that's why that's a key piece of the Harrisburg Comp Plan. Is the City Beautiful movement had this overarching goal of trying to link things together. We can argue whether or not that's good or bad, but at least it set the city on a course of the next century, right? That's no different than where we're at now. We're at a planning point in life in Harrisburg where if we don't set things in and understand the relationships of things, it can be detrimental to the long-term effects. That is our framework for everything else that comes in the chapters to follow. So I recommend going through the integration chapter and beginning to understand some of the basics that are there and how they integrate. So I would be asking city officials, state officials, how things are getting integrated. Who's looking after this? Are there mechanisms once a development is slated to happen, such as the federal courthouse? Is this actually connected to a larger network? Is, say, for instance, two-way conversion of 2nd Street? Is that understood in a larger framework? Is the Paxton Creek development and watershed looking at it connected to the larger idea of the Harrisburg Transportation Center? But each of those are in and of themselves master planning exercises, but those need to be thought through in a comprehensive planning exercise. That's why we have a comprehensive plan. So I hope this is helpful in getting someone interested in this and why it's important from a citizen's point of view. And we need an open forum for that to happen. Unfortunately, the city just doesn't have that forum to happen. There's been highlights of it when we talk about Act 47 in public discussion, or there's been public discussions on the comp plan. But what happens in those are isolated incidents that aren't tracked and seen through the whole year. So I think we come back and we forget about what was discussed or what was important and never put any milestones down. And this is where poor planning is our detriment in Harrisburg. I hope in 2019, this is the whole point of 52 weeks, is that we can come together with a community capacity building mindset that looks at what are the things that we hold together as important and how do we make that happen? And ultimately, how do we make that happen for the long-term good of all people in Harrisburg, particularly those who've been forgotten over the years?